So look who I found in Canada, everyone. Robbie Strike. So we're going to talk about antennas.
Right on, yeah. Oh wait, I want to talk about satellites.
No, we should talk about antennas.
Well, I'd like to talk about satellites.
I want to talk about antennas.
I want to talk about
I
satellites.
want to talk about antennas.
I want to talk about satellites.
Ah! So in all seriousness, I have a few questions I'm going to ask Robbie, and he's going to ask me a few questions as well. And then after that, we're going to have a nice discussion about both free over-the-air TV and satellite TV.
Yeah.
So my question for you, Robbie, is how did you get into free over-the-air satellite TV?
Satellite? Well, I've always wanted a satellite. Like at home, I always wanted. When I drew pictures in school, I drew houses with like satellite dishes on it, solar panels.
No way, I did that with
windmills.
the antennas.
Yeah,
I did that
and
with the
antennas. Yeah, I had antennas and satellites, and I always wanted both. Like I have, well now I have multiple antennas on my tower. I have multiple satellite dishes. So kind of what I drew when I was a kid is coming to fruition, and I actually have like all that stuff now. And I love both because with antennas and with satellite, you can do a search and you can find stuff that no one else knows is out there. Not too many people know, even in my area for over-the-air TV, people don't realize that you can put an aerial up, which is pretty easy to do, and get channels like south of the border here. And there's like, in my situation, I get 40 channels over the air. And with my satellite, I get about maybe 100 channels. I mean, they're a lot harder to set up than an antenna, but there's a whole lot of content out there. And then you kind of discover content that you might not discover. I think that's another thing I like about it is the discovery of linear TV. You can put it on, there'll be a program on that you might not even know you'd be interested in, but you kind of stop and you watch it. And that's kind of like with the internet now. It's like you have to search and find things. You don't necessarily discover things as well as if you were channel surfing.
Yeah, that's what I like about linear TV, and I agree with you on the aspect of not only over-the-air, but free-to-satellite TV. The things that the TV stations and networks you're not familiar with, all this content, as you said, you tune in and there's something on, and you discover things that way. You don't necessarily discover things on demand. I mean, sometimes you do, but I'm the kind of person, I think many of you out there are the same way, where it's just cool to select a channel and see what's on and discover some new things. And free-to-air satellite TV is probably really good for Canada, especially considering that over-the-air TV, there's not as many options as there are in the United States.
If you're living in a town, like I live in Kingston, Ontario, and we're pretty close to the U.S. border. So we can pick up Watertown and Syracuse and sometimes Ithaca. So we can pick up channels south of the border. Same thing with Toronto. A lot of the cities in Canada are pretty close to the U.S. border, so they can pick up a lot of the U.S. channels. But here in Canada, the broadcasters, for example, CTV, which is owned by Bell, typically are not. They've reduced their repeaters in rural areas, and so it's unfortunately, if you have a cottage, you might have been always be able to watch TV with an antenna, and nowadays you can't really do that.
Just our luck, isn't that
wonderful?
Just
our luck.
Well, thankfully I have pretty good equipment, so the microphone should cancel out some of the background noise. I'm not going to wait for this guy to stop. He's got a lawn to mow and stuff like that. But this is so funny. It's almost like
he can cut that tree down. It's blocking one of my dishes. Take his mower and drive over the tree.
This is quite hilarious. But yeah, so one thing that most of you may not know about over-the-air TV in Canada is that they don't really have subchannels in the United States. So, for example, most of you know if you get like a local ABC, NBC, CBS station, there's like, if it's channel 7, you get 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4 with a variety of subchannels like Me TV, Cozy TV, all that. In Canada, that's not the case.
Yeah, we really don't have subchannels. In the early days of digital, we would have they'd have like 2 subchannels, which would be the standard definition version of their channel and the high definition version of their channel. And then they took that away.
So it'd be basically duplicates, like you don't even get any new programming.
Yeah.
I thought that was a joke because I read online that like some of them were multiplexing their signal, and it's like it's the same thing. Why would you watch it in standard definition if you had it in high definition?
I don't know, maybe they're testing the sub-channel capability of their system, but they just never really went forward. I mean, and there's so much they could do. Like in the early days of digital TV, even in the States, they would loop their weather or their newscast. But they don't seem to have that anymore, if you've noticed. You don't see that. But like 10 years ago, if you had digital over-the-air TV, your local channel would have like the newscast looped on a sub channel.
So that's crazy, Robbie. I don't know if any of you guys were cord cutters back in the 2000s, but a lot of TV stations had that, where they had like news and weather looped on the sub channel. And it sounds like they were on the right track, and then they went backwards by getting rid of, you know, those kind of sub channels and just showing the thing. But as you said, the main reason is that, so in the United States, we have these big media companies that own local TV stations, and I thought that was bad, but then I realized they understand that over-the-air TV is a market in itself, and they're going to at least try their best to embrace it and utilize it. While in Canada, the TV stations are owned by teleco companies, cable companies that literally do not want people to get their signal over the air.
I don't know if they may disagree with that, but they don't really seem to put an effort like how in the U.S. Some of the channels have all the sub channels and all that. And obviously with Tyler and his channel, it was just really blown up, there's a lot of interest for over-the-air TV. Just look at the Antenna Man's channel. He's got like over 200,000 subscribers, millions of views. And yes, thanks for following Tyler, because before Tyler we had videos where people did top 5 antennas, and they had like reviews of antennas, and then there was like some crappy antenna that was a flat indoor antenna was the #1 antenna. Now we have Tyler, the Antenna Man, to give us reviews and tell us what antennas are good and for your situation. And I think you've been really helpful to the over-the-air community for that, because like you're the go-to guy for antennas.
Well, thanks, Robbie. That's one thing that always grinds my gears, is when I see reviews of antennas, both on YouTube and Amazon, where someone basically says, I got 40 channels, it's a good antenna, and there's no comparison. As most of you probably saw, I made a video where you can get TV stations with a paper clip. So just saying an antenna got you X amount of channels is not necessarily, I mean, it's better than nothing, but what you want to do is you want to show your reception report. So if you get 40 channels in a weak signal area, that's pretty good. But getting just 40 channels alone doesn't necessarily mean anything. So I do appreciate the kind words about my channel. I always try to make it, you know, more balanced, and there's a data approach to reviewing antennas too that I try to do. And you know, I'm sure you may explore that route at some point, which would be really cool, and do it your own way. But I just don't like when people review antennas and all they say is, I got these channels. They need to compare it to another antenna, or at least show their reception report where, hey, I'm in a weak signal area, this is the report, shows the signals are weak. Because I have people that say, oh, I live in a valley and this got me 40 channels. Well, yeah, you live in a valley, but the broadcast towers is 2,000 feet tall above the valley, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Another thing too is a lot of people, I was in a situation about 10 years ago where I lived in an apartment and I couldn't put up a tower. And I could barely put up a satellite dish. They really didn't want people putting satellite dishes on balconies. But I came up with all these clever solutions, even for indoor antennas. And I found buying an outdoor antenna and just putting it somewhere indoors, because the outdoor antennas perform better even indoors. Some of like those bigger antennas compared to rabbit ears, because they're amplified and you'll get more signal. So luckily, when I lived in an apartment, I was on the 6th floor, so I was able to get from Kingston. Some days I get Buffalo, New York. I actually did better in my apartment. I did better in that direction. The channels from that direction, that's like east, and I was able to get channels a lot better with that. So, but I know a lot of people can't put up a 10-foot Yagi in their house. But that's going to be the antenna that's going to perform. The bigger is better with antennas. Same thing with satellite dishes.
And I agree with you there. So when I was in college, I went to Penn State, and I had the same situation where a small indoor antenna was not getting anything. So I had an outdoor antenna inside, and any of you could use this as well if you're in an apartment. The ones that work pretty well are the UHF bay style antennas, the ones that have like the figure 8s. They're like the 4 bay and the 2 bay ones.
Right.
Those are pretty good because you have the ability to, like, it has a gain of the outdoor, and most frequencies are on the UHF band, most TV stations. So it's going to work better than a small, like, Clearstream antenna, for example, just because it has more gain. And it's a little more flat, so you can put it up against a wall or a window, and it's not too intrusive or anything like that.
But I do know people who have, like, antennas, and a little flat antenna, they put it on the wall, they get their local channel, and they're happy with that, because they get their local news, and that's all they care about. And that's great. I mean, I hope there's a lot of people that wake up to that even if they want to go like a very simple route, if that were to work for you, I mean, that'd be great just to get your local channels. Because like sometimes a good percentage of the time when I actually watch TV, it's that local channel that I'm watching for the local news, local content. We had a channel here, CKWS, and a couple of years ago, it's kind of gone downhill a little bit, but they used to have like a couple hours a week of local content Like they kind of had like a sit down, set up chair interview, and they still have that. But it's like you're seeing less and less TV stations actually have that local content, I think, too.
Yeah, that tends to happen as time goes on. I stopped by his house yesterday and we talked about this, how the consolidation of media, basically these big media companies taking over these smaller stations, is ending up with TV stations producing less local content and more state and national content because it's cheaper that way. But the end result is that communities lose certain things. I mean, if you guys ever had a media company take over a local TV station like Sinclair or Nexstar, the first thing they usually do is immediately just start laying off long-term talent and really what I refer to as trimming the fat of a TV station.
Right,
but
yeah.
fat makes things good, in terms of like fast food and, delicious hamburgers. That's what makes it good. If you trim all the fat, it's going to taste horrible. And that's the way some TV stations are. They're bland and just soulless.
Yeah.
But so we talked a little about antennas. Tell me a little about free-to-air satellite TV, because I think that honestly, if you're in Canada or in a remote area where antennas don't work for local TV stations, free-to-air satellite TV could be a very good alternative.
Yeah. If you're like in a more rural area, maybe not so much for people who are in apartments, although you can put one up in an apartment building. Just like you can take a pole and put it in a cement, put some cement into a bucket, and you have yourself a stand and put your antenna on there, and you can even an antenna or a satellite dish, and you can have like at least KU band. But in North America, it tends to be everything's on big dish on C band. There is content on KU band, but it just seems to be a slimmer amount of variety, where the bigger and juicier variety of the channels, like the MeTV, Cozy's on KU band, some of the network channels, Decades, all the DigiNets, all the DigiNets. So if you live in an area and you don't get all the DigiNets, C-band satellite tends to have a lot of that, and they have a ton of other content on there as well. News feeds, I think there's like every week it seems to be there's a new news channel popping up. Mm-hmm. So like there's lots of news on satellite. There is lots of religious content, and that's I think that's the bad rep that free-to-air satellite has, is like it's all religious channels, which is not true. There is a lot of religious channels, but it's not all religious channels. I think there's people say that might be looking at Galaxy 19, which is probably the easiest satellite to get because you can get it with a small, like a 96 centimeter dish. I pick it up with an old Shaw Direct dish. And if you're in the States, if you had an old Orbi dish, you can aim at that satellite and get like maybe about a couple hundred channels.
So some people are probably it's almost like antennas. When people say an antenna won't work in my area, they use the small little mud flap antennas. Yeah. It's like, no wonder it's not going to work if you're in a weak. Now those work okay in strong signal areas, so I'm not totally dissing the flat antennas. Some of them work pretty well. But it sounds to me like some people go to free-to-air satellite TV, get the small dish, and only get like mostly religious channels when they actually need the bigger dish to get, what is that, C-band you said?
Yeah, C-band, like basically the big black dishes that you used to see like in the 80s and 90s, which still work today. You might need to do a few upgrades to them. You might have to change the LMB for the newer receivers. But all that, like even to upgrade a C-band system could be like $200 to $300. I say $200 to $300 because with everything going up in price, it's like it's a little bit more expensive now.
Yeah, I feel like I can't even say prices anymore. In case you guys didn't notice, I have to black out the pricing and all the antennas I review because I got people saying, "Oh, this antenna was only $60 last year, now it's $120." I'm like, yeah. Look at everything else.
Everything's changing. So the recording of this video is in August 2022.
August 2022. So we'll see how dated the time goes.
People will be watching this 1,000 years from now and like, these guys.
Who are these people? Look, what were they wearing? But so that sounds, and just to be clear, some people may not know, you don't have to have free-to-air satellite dishes on the roof, correct? You can just put them in the yard as long as they have a clear line of sight of the sky,
as long as you got a clear line of sight. If you can see behind me here, I got them on the fence. Not the best place to put it on a fence, but it works. You can put it on the fence, and I've put them on right here on this deck, and just in a bucket with or a short tripod. And I didn't have to get the height. That's the nice thing is if you're in like a mountainous area and you're not getting anything, at least the satellite dish, you'll be able to get line of sight to the satellite.
Yeah, and if it doesn't have to go on the roof, those of you who have the wife that says, "I don't want that satellite dish on my roof," well, you could put it behind the house and no one will see it.
Yeah, you can run along. You can have a pretty decent cable run with those things too, and run it into your house and still get signal and have it kind of hidden away. Except for me, I like to see them. I like looking at them.
I do too, same with the antennas. But the irony is, in terms of my YouTube channel, because I'm so busy, a lot of people ask me, what antenna do I have? And the irony is, I don't have an antenna on my roof right now because I just don't put an effort to over-the-air TV because there's not much, I don't have much time to watch a lot of TV, so I've just been using like an indoor antenna. I've been using a Clearstream antenna.
We're two guys, we love the technology of TV, but we probably don't watch hardly any
No,
of the content
we really don't.
because
People think it's odd. They're like, you're the antenna man, you don't have a giant, televis or
there's a lot of good stuff on YouTube though.
Yeah, no, there actually is. And the other issue is that like the network affiliates I get are strong enough to be picked up with an indoor antenna. So I don't really gain much with an outdoor antenna. I basically gain like a duplicate like Fox and a CBS affiliate that like it's not what I'm looking for. Now, for some people, if they're in smaller markets where there's no MeTV affiliate and the out-of-market station is MeTV, they would probably benefit with a larger antenna, but not everyone needs an outdoor antenna. I try to put an effort in all of my indoor antenna reviews to say that if you run a rabbit ears reception report and you get, it says good signals and you don't have too many trees around, you probably get away with an indoor or attic antenna. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be outside. Of course, you get the best reception with it outside, but most people can't necessarily go on the roof and shouldn't go on the roof, so yeah. I'm not opposed to people setting up indoor antennas.
What I just did, and I just did a review on an antenna, and I really like this idea. I got poles, like these.
You reviewed an antenna?
Yeah, I did.
You reviewed a YouTube antenna?
Yeah.
Okay, this interview's over.
So anyway, I took some poles.
Just kidding, guys.
I took some poles. They're about 5-foot poles. So I have a knee injury right now, so I didn't want to climb up on my tower. So I just took some 5-foot poles, and they extend into each other. It was harder pushing the button for the pole to get it to connect, but I was able to get an antenna. My main purpose for this is if I go camping and I bring an antenna out for the trailer and I want to put it up, I can set up an aerial real easy. And I don't have the crank on the roof of my my tent trailer, but at least with a tent trailer you can unzip it and just stick your hand out and adjust your antenna and get better picture quality.
So that's something else I want to make clear too, is I get a lot of people ask me, what's the best RV antenna? Tyler, you should review RV antennas. The fact is, most RV antennas are very limited in performance. Most of them are small omnidirectional antennas. And really, those will work okay, they're convenient, but the way to get the best reception with an RV antenna is to set up a more directional antenna. It doesn't have to be large, it could be a small Clearstream antenna. And then as you travel, point it towards the major broadcast towers, because then you get the most gain that way. If you just have an omnidirectional antenna that's set up there, at the top, it's gonna receive, TV stations not well in all directions compared to well in one direction. So I always tell people that. I know a lot of you have asked me about RV antennas, and I said, no, don't limit yourself to an RV antenna because you're going to get limited results.
But another thing I've also had with satellites is I've had people ask me about RVs for their satellite, either for subscription satellite or even for free to air satellite for a KU band system, and it's pretty easy to get like a tripod. I'm gonna say they're $20, but they're probably more than that because everything's gone up. But I put my my satellite dish on a tripod, and it's not temporary. It's kind of like a temporary place where you put it, especially if you're on the go. So you can do that. But also, yeah, with the RV, it's just nice to have a directional Yagi because you can be way out in the country somewhere and far from the city. But if you get a Yagi, you can get that thing on a post, like locked in to where you want to get to where the city is to get a much better signal.
Yeah, and to be clear to most of you, just so I can explain further in case you're not aware, omnidirectional antennas, they're very low gain. They don't work the best. They're good in strong signal areas. They're convenient because you don't have to point them. But the problem is they don't have as much gain. So, for example, let's say I'm in a fair or weak signal area and I have an RV. If I have an omnidirectional antenna, I might not get many channels, if anything. But a directional, because it has more gain and can soak up more of the signal, yes, I have to get out and point it, but the end result is more reliable reception. I'm not talking about a big, massive antenna. I'm just talking about a small, like maybe a Clearstream or a Televista Nova. Those are even they're also kind of multi-directional, so they're not a true omni, but they'll still you don't necessarily have to point them all the time. Like, you could just set it up and probably get a decent amount of channels.
You set it up, do a scan.
But it will work the best pointed towards the major broadcast tower.
Yeah.
So thank you for that point about, omnidirectional antennas in RVs. That's something I've been meaning to tell you guys.
Yeah, you should do a video on that one. That's it's definitely a topic.
Yeah, no, I will at some point.
Beginning of summer. So
yeah, and for those of you who stayed tuned in this interview, here is kind of the answer to the question. The best RV antennas is, as I said, like a smaller directional antenna that's not an RV antenna that you put on the RV. Maybe if you have a ladder on the RV, you hook it on there, you get like a flat roof mount, put it on when you travel, when you're done, and then use the antenna point compass or, rabbitears.info, see where the major networks are, point in that direction, use a small tuner, because sometimes moving an antenna from here to here can be the difference between locking a signal and not getting anything.
And you might want to do that before you're at the campsite, because I've went to a campsite before. I just went camping this summer, and there was like no cell phone signal out there. And then there was like this septic bed on the top of a hill, and everyone was staying on top of the septic bed, desperately trying to get cell phone signal.
Yeah, speaking of cell phone signal, it's funny, as soon as I entered Canada, I was listening to Sirius XM on my phone using the data, and as soon as I crossed the border, it cut out. And then I noticed I had service, but there's no data, and I was like, crap, I'm not gonna have data. And I was coordinating with Robbie Strike through Wi-Fi, so I had to go downtown in Kingston and look for Wi-Fi spots like it was 2009. It was actually kind of cool to not have the ability to check everything.
I do that all the time. I don't pay for data because data is too expensive in Canada. So I just use ExpressVPN. I have a link in my videos for an affiliate link for that. But ExpressVPN or whatever. But I use that when I use public Wi-Fi because it encrypts your data and keeps you protected. But I mean, I pay $6 a month for ExpressVPN, and I use public Wi-Fi, so it keeps me protected, and I can look at my Facebook. I don't know.
Yeah, VPN is definitely must have if you use public Wi-Fi, because the thing is public Wi-Fi is open. If you type in a credit card info on there, there could be someone spying on you, so VPN is important. One clarification I do want to make, the irony of the no data thing in Canada was I wasn't getting data, but I saw it service, and I thought that was odd because I thought Cricket Wireless had international, which is AT&T, had international data roaming. It turns out it was just a setting on my phone that I had to enable international data roaming. So after about 2 hours of living in 2009, almost like with an iPod Touch, I realized, okay, I do have data, and I was able to coordinate with Robbie, book my hotel and everything like that.
Yeah. It's a good test in case we ever, the internet, something happens. We had this happen in Canada. Rogers, which is the big cable company in Canada, their network went down, and there was like ATMs were not working.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was businesses were not able to process the payment processors. And just do their online booking or whatever. And just because Rogers had an outage.
How many main providers are there in Canada? I'm not talking about the MVP, NOs, whatever they're called.
I would say there's Rogers, there's Bell, and there's some smaller companies, but the two lines that are going out, we have power lines here, and there'll be a phone line and there'll be a cable line. So pretty much the two main ones would be like Rogers and Bell. Those are the two main ones. There's some smaller ones. I use a company that's a smaller one, but it's cheaper, and it's start.ca, and I'm very happy with them. But they use cable. Like, they actually use cable to the house for internet. There's so what was the question again?
I was asking about cell phone companies.
Oh, cell phone?
How many of
Not
the
internet.
cell phone companies do you have?
Oh gosh, we have a lot, but the two, and that's the same two companies are the two main tower, like they're the owners of the towers, is Bell and Rogers.
Okay, because in the United States
and
we have
tell
three.
Us. Someone's gonna correct me in the comments and say tell us.
That's all good. We used to have 4. We only have 3. So any cell phone company have, whether it's Cricket or Metro PCS, they go off either AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile. There used to be Sprint, but Sprint was so bad, I was actually glad that T-Mobile took them over, because you don't live in the States, but Sprint was just this absolutely horrible cell phone company.
Oh, really?
They had, when I was at Penn State, there was 1 bar of service, and I said, you guys have 1 cell tower in one of the largest universities in the country. You guys are idiots. No wonder you're failing. And sure enough, they failed, so good riddance to them.
Yeah, but the company can't, it's customer support. Big companies, you got to do more customer support.
Got that right, big time. All right, so anything else you want to talk about in the meantime?
I think we're good for now. I want to see what you're going to do with that test there for the Channel 2 and Channel 2 in what you came up here for.
Yeah, so it was a very interesting experiment that I got. So there was still a TV station on the air in analog in Bancroft, is it?
Yeah, I think it's CIII.
Yeah, CIII TV2.
Which is a global affiliate, and I can hear the audio on my antenna here in Kingston. I can't see any picture though. I don't have a big enough, because it's low VHF. Most antennas don't really bother putting like a big long elements on them because that's only what channels to 6, 2 to 6 for VHF.
Yeah, low VHF, which
Yeah.
isn't, there's pretty much no low VHF in Canada, so it's not necessary. But yeah, the signal was pretty weak. I was able to get it in my hotel, actually playing around with the antenna in a bunch of spots. I was able to get it very weak in black and white. But the problem is, it's really fascinating that I told you yesterday that it came in okay on the ground floor of this hotel, but on the 6th floor of my room, it would not come in like at all. And that really shows that low VHF has such a problem going through building material that it can be crystal clear outside on the ground, but not come in, 6 stories up because of the building material.
So would that channel, my question to you is, you'd be able to answer this, would that work well for tropospheric ducting?
Yes, in fact,
a
lot of DXers have caught it, and one in my area caught it last year, and it was picked up in Portugal. So the TV station that I showed in the other video, it can be picked up in Portugal, like through ESCIP. So ESCIP is basically, for those of you that don't know, when there's certain atmospheric conditions, TV signals, instead of going into outer space and shooting out to outer space, because Earth is curved, some of you may not believe that.
No, it's flat.
Shut up. We're going to have some arguments now. Okay, no. All right, so let's just say atmospheric conditions allow TV stations to travel further than usual, and the low band is really good for that. So CIII TV2, especially analog, it's really hard for digital. Analog, it's a lot easier to catch it because it only lasts for a few seconds, while digital, it's almost impossible to get just because of how tricky and temperamental it is. And as I said, a dude in Portugal picked up this TV station. So if you want to look on a map, see from Canada to Portugal, it's a pretty far distance.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now, the world is flat. There's a porthole at the South Pole where the globalists and the New World Order is hiding, and when satellites are actually like balloons, really in high altitude, they're not actually in space. It's all conspiracy.
Hey, make your channel on that. Maybe you'll get a lot of followers. Look at I won't mention specific names.
No,
there are
that's
plenty
right.
of people out there that have a lot
Full
of
disclosure,
followers.
I challenge any flat earther. Just explain to me how satellites do work. I mean, I'd be interested in hearing that argument.
Yeah, you'll have to check the comments a little bit later to see some of the arguments. I think most people agree with that, but not to get to, some may call this almost a political statement, but yeah, no, anyway, I was just going to say that low frequencies are a lot better at traveling through during tropo conditions. The certain times in the spring, summer, and fall when TV stations travel really far for a certain amount of minutes or hours. And I couldn't believe that a guy in Portugal was picking up the TV station. It's absolutely crazy.
Although unfortunately it was global.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're like NBC. They're like the Canadian NBC affiliate, or is it CBS? They have The Young and the Restless on shows like that.
Yeah, they look like a CBS, but in terms of the quality, I wouldn't say exactly what company, but it's one of the big media companies when they take over one of those stations.
Yeah, Global is owned by Chorus Media, and
CW is what I'm thinking of. The CW is kind of like a flop. It's not much of anything anymore.
Oh, really? Really? Yeah, I used to get it, and I don't really see. I never watched it.
It's still around, but it's for sale. So it can. Nexstar is potentially going to buy it
Tyler,
out.
we have money. We can't put our funds together and buy it. Eh?
No, we can't buy it.
Crap.
I have my own YouTube channel, so I put out random content such as this. I don't think the average American would like this kind of content, but I appreciate you guys too.
No, I mean, it doesn't even have to be our channel. It's just better content than what they have on.
Yeah. Well, it's mainly, I think the issue was the CW targeted people who are too young that probably aren't watching live TV.
Oh, okay.
So that's probably why it flopped. And that's another video I plan on making is just that, and I think we talked about this yesterday, was that local TV stations really have to start targeting millennials and Gen Z, because people my age aren't really watching live TV. They're watching on demand. And yeah, sporting events, they'll watch it. But I tell people, I talk about TV antennas, everyone looks at me like I have a giant crater on my head every time I tell them TV antennas. Like, what, those still exist? The reason they're asking those questions is because these TV stations have done no marketing whatsoever towards them. And if they don't do anything in the next 20, 30 years, it's going to end up like AM radio, where no one's listening to it except, people who are much older, who eventually, unfortunately, will be off the earth and there'll be no listeners.
I must be old. I listen to AM.
There's not too
I'm
many.
44, so.
But if you ask anyone my age, do you listen to AM radio? They'll say no. If you say live TV, they may say I watch NFL or NHL on TV, but that's about it.
And AM's gone even AM stations are starting to have FM repeaters. We have one in this area where it's talk radio, but they have an FM because it's just clearer. And plus you can't. AM, you lose signal at night.
Yeah.
Like it's clear during the daytime, but then what happens as soon as the sun goes down,
Unless it's a clear channel station, there's only a few clear channel stations. The stations that stay powered 50,000 watts throughout, day and night, there's only a few of them. But yeah, in the United States, they had what was called the AM revitalization plan, where they basically gave all AM stations an FM translator just so that they can maintain their audience, because the issue is they're losing their audience. There's people my age are not tuning into AM radio. They're not getting new people.
But what I wish would catch on is the HD radio that you're talking about.
Yeah, that could have caught on. I think the issue was the power limits were set way too low because they're on the same frequency.
Yeah.
And if it was too much power, it would interfere with the analog.
Yeah.
And but yeah, that could be a thing. Now, an interesting thing in the future is ATSC 3.0 could have the ability, in theory. There could be an ATSC 3.0 signal that would be audio, in cars that would have potentially 100 stations. So that's something.
And you can have like TV audio with that too.
Yeah.
Every car's like a smart car. Well, we're going to self-driving cars now too. So people are just going to sit and watch TV while they
and I believe Sinclair. I may be wrong, so Marshall, I apologize, the guy with Sinclair, if I quoted your company wrong. But I believe, take it with a grain of salt, that I'm pretty sure Sinclair is taking this approach to ATSC 3.0, the on-the-go mobile aspect of it, in connected cars and taxis, potentially the radio. I'm pretty sure I read something about their proposition for like ATSC 3.0 radio. So, ATSC 3.0 is just so amazing because there's just so many possibilities, and we're in such the early stages that it's basically the sky's the limit. Like, it can potentially be, a whole bunch of stations, a lot more stations, better picture quality, better reception. It could be, radio stations, it could be connected cars.
It's going to be 40 channels on one channel that look like watching the internet video from like 2006.
Well, to my surprise, though, with the advancements in the encoding, they actually don't have that issue. I was
they're using HEVC, so it's
HEVC. So some of them will be like SD, but the thing is, instead of like all blocky what you guys see on over-the-air TV now, it'll actually be pretty clear. In fact, I saw an SD broadcast that Sinclair was doing experimentally back in 2019, and I thought it was high definition. That's how clear it was. Yeah, it looked that good.
And you recently did a video about MPEG 4 or a HEVC ATSC broadcast. And so they're starting, that's like another alternative to ATSC is, but unfortunately, the unfortunate part about that is a lot of TVs are only have MPEG 2 encoders and will not work with some of the subchannels that are in MPEG 4, right?
Yeah, they're doing that very slowly. So most of you guys probably saw that video that I posted. And what's happening is there's only a few stations nationwide, maybe like 10 to 20, that they're changing the encoding from MPEG 2 to MPEG 4 because it's more efficient, they can have better picture quality and fit more subchannels in. But the issue is, as you said, older TVs, most TVs are fine. But if there's, households, which are in most viewing areas that have, TV from like 2008 or 2009.
My TV from 2009 died long ago.
Well, some of them last. I had a TV from 2009 until last year. But the issue is, so I think what networks are doing is they're slowly, not maybe the main networks, but the subchannels in smaller areas, they're kind of experimenting. So they're switching like one less watched subchannel over to see if they get responses of people saying, hey, I can't get it anymore. And then over time, and maybe like 5 years, even if ATSC 3 doesn't necessarily take off, because it's hard to explain. I may make a video in the future about why it may also flop, because it's very hard to explain. It's a voluntary standard, not enough involvement from major networks, and then just the fact that there's not much spectrum after the FCC keeps selling our TV spectrum to cell phone companies.
Yeah. But, and satellite spectrum too.
Yeah, they're selling satellite spectrum too. They need to stop selling things that don't belong to them. But anyway, so MPEG 4 is a great alternative. ATSC 3 for some reason doesn't take off, where it could be like the HD radio of today where it's around, but it's just not much. MPEG 4 will allow a lot more TV stations, not like a lot more, but more TV stations, better picture quality. Yeah. Not as good as ATSC 3, but better than what we have now.
And most channels are broadcasting still in that over 20-year-old standard, which is MPEG 2. And even on satellite, like for example, Galaxy 19, a lot of the channels are still MPEG 2, and they're actually very low bit rate, so they don't look the most nice as nice as they could be. They could use the same. So I think these channels are paying about $5,000 a month to have the channels up. It all depends. It could be depending on the bit rate. It could be either $5,000 or I think an HD channel costs about $20,000 a month to have it on satellite. But I mean, if religious organizations pull this off because like, they get the donations, right? It's like maybe that's what I need to do is become a TV preacher.
Yeah, become a televangelist.
Send somebody, I love you.
Yeah, the Church of Antennas. Worship the satellite, just bow down to all those gods behind us.
But yeah, I mean, and that's why there's a lot of religious channels on satellite, is because they pay the money to be on satellite. They want to get that reach of people where, for whatever reason, a lot of the broadcast channels, all the networks don't necessarily have their channels on free their satellite anymore. They used to, and there's a few that actually still do have their channels on satellite. But it's they don't really care, or they don't tell people they're on satellite. It's like kind of one of those things that's meant for just the backhauls, and if anyone can get it, it's good for you. You get it, but they don't. It's almost like over the air TV.
It's like fair game.
Yeah, it's almost like over the air TV. They don't really tell people that
no,
they're
they
on
don't.
over the air TV. They just say we're on cable 20, or something like that,
Yeah, the only exception is a huge shout out to Scripps, the media company that owns some TV stations. They are actually putting an effort to promote over-the-air TV to get people back to antennas, because when was the last time any of you guys saw local TV stations say, hey, did you know you can get CBS 3 with an antenna? Here's what you do. They never say a word about it.
They'll talk about their streaming. They go to their website, stream us through the whatever their app is.
But they don't want you to know that you can get them for free, all their networks in free, high definition with an antenna. Otherwise, there's no reason why I wouldn't promote it. There's retransmission fees involved. Most of you know what that is. And, I talked about it. And the thing is, though, at least they understand in the United States that it's a market in itself. So over-the-air TV, people aren't going to go pay for their signals. So they have to at least maintain the audience they have for over-the-air TV. They don't want to promote the people who have cable to get over-the-air TV, but people who have over-the-air TV.
We had a situation, I talked to you a bit about that last night, is that we used to have a channel here in Watertown that used to go all the way to Ottawa. So Ottawa used, like, the early days of cable, they had their antennas basically pulled the channels off the antenna. That's how cable first started. They just had big master antenna systems that pulled channels from far away, and they would rebroadcast it on cable. So we had a company out of Watertown, a channel out of Watertown, and they were going to Ottawa, and then all of a sudden they decided to change it to another channel. So it was another CBS affiliate, and they didn't even tell them.
Really?
And then they found out that they were no longer on cable. They were getting most of their views and business was actually here in Ontario, but these northern New York stations, when they changed to another station, they were quite upset that they weren't getting all the ad revenue of basically owning like a good chunk of Ontario, because that's like people in Canada would with cable would still have CBS, ABC, and PBS and all the network channels, and all of a sudden it just changed without them even knowing.
Yeah, I find that interesting about Canada. So in Canada, a lot of people who live near the U.S. border, their main priority is to get U.S. channels because there's a lot more. The funny thing is, Robbie showed me his antenna and what he got. He gets 40 channels. Out of the 40 channels, only one of them is from Canada. The rest are all from the United States. So it just goes to show you something. Even me, I set up an antenna. The antenna man could only get one Canada channel. So if I can only get one Canada channel, they're doing something wrong.
There used to be, back when it was analog, they had rebroadcasts.
Yeah, CJOH was one of them.
Yeah, CJOH was one of them. People used to get that from far away because I think it was on Channel 6.
Yeah.
And people used to DX it and get it it was like, wow, there's still an analog channel, like up to a few years ago. And because Canada was kind of slow to go digital, they still had their analog repeaters going up till at least 2015, 2016.
Yeah, I read that, and it's funny because I always thought that they were like the U.S. where they had a hard deadline, and it was just 2011 they were all shut off, because I used to have relatives in Erie, and when I went there after the digital transition, I had a small analog TV, and I thought, I'm not going to get anything, but because the low powers were still on the air in the United States, and I was getting like dozens of channels from I think Toronto, perfectly crystal clear across the lake, and I was like, wow, they're still analog. And then I thought when they shut down, it's kind of like with the United States, a lot of you guys probably thought in 2009 it was the end, but even like to last year, there was some still on the air.
Yeah.
In Canada, I guess the full power repeaters were still allowed to broadcast, or smaller markets like in Kingston. I didn't realize that the Kingston channel was on until like 15.
They still have like channels in big cities, but some of the rural areas, and Canada's a big country, and free satellite TV would be a great solution if they put their channels on K-band, because like it costs $20,000 a month, and how much is a broadcast tower?
I don't know.
A lot more than that.
No idea.
For like an HD channel. So and then just to have like channels out there, it'll be interesting to see if Orbi TV, this company that's relaunching Orbi TV, because they're going to do a kind of a subscription base and also a free tier is what I gather. So it's very in the early stages, but that's what it looks like they might maybe doing, or they're doing at this point. I don't know if they'll encrypt all the satellite channels because they have channels that they definitely want eyeballs watching, religious channels and maybe some news channels.
You know, that would be so smart. They would get so much of the market if they did that. If that's true and that actually ends up happening, that Orbi TV has like a free tier with some of the basic free channels, maybe not the major networks, but you know, some channels, and then they have the tier where you could pay for get more valuable channels. That would be great for people, even over-the-air viewers. They would get a lot of installation requests, like because the people with antennas that maybe don't get all their major networks reliably, they could at least have the Orbi satellite dish and get some extra channels, even if it may not be the best content. It's free content.
Yeah, but that's really in its infancy stage of them relaunching. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
And we'll both be covering that as it as it plays out. But it's also. You'd wonder if it's a little bit too late to the game, like for satellite, because like now we have like streaming, we have satellite internet now is getting a lot better. So, but I mean, if the price is right, as long as they don't go like with some of the other satellite companies where they're charging over $100 a month for. I mean, they could make a go at it. I mean, I keep telling the cable company, I'll get cable. I'll pay you $5 a month, $5 a month for cable.
It used to be that way.
Yeah,
long time ago.
I used to pay $20 a month, like back in maybe 2003. And that was a promotional plan. But I was paying $20 a month, and I think they got me up to 30 because I wanted a wrestling channel. And yeah, it's and then once they said, hey, we're going to be like $50, $60 a month, I said, no, I'm just going to go back to an antenna.
To be honest, what I think is happening is that the cable is becoming the antenna, where people just didn't really use the antennas, and antennas are becoming cable, where basically it's superior and people are starting to go to it.
Oh yeah, well, like back in the 90s, I didn't even have 100 channels on cable. And now with an antenna, you get over 100 channels.
You get more channels with an antenna in certain markets than you do with cable, and you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's what's amazing. Now, there are some exceptions, but there is a huge, in case you guys aren't aware, over-the-air usage, people who use antennas, has significantly increased from about 10% in 2009, 2010, to it's up to almost 30 or 33% now. Yeah. So it's about double or triple the amount of people, and you can see with the success of my YouTube channel how many people are going to it.
And it's good to see like antennas in like a Walmart or a place like that, or Canadian Tire, or a what do you got in the States? You got Target and places like that where you go and you'll see an antenna on the floor, right? And people say, "Oh, an antenna, they still work," and they'll see like they'll look. I think it's kind of helpful for over-the-air TV. They'll see like, "Oh, network TV with this thing."
What companies should do, like Walmart and Target, is they should understand the market. So what I don't like is when companies like stores like Walmart or even Best Buy are in like a bad signal area and they'll have itty bitty small antennas. And I'm like, you're not going to get anything with that. Like they should staff the store relevant to the reception. Like if you're in like a weak signal area, they should have more Televis and Channel Master and WineGuard antennas that they carry. And then in like the cities, the small ones, because the issue is a lot of people who try out antennas.
They buy the one you tell them not to buy.
They buy a little piece of crap and they're like, oh, an antenna won't work in my area. I tried one. You don't know how much that grinds my gears, guys. When I have people that will say like, oh, an antenna won't work in my area, I try one, I'm like, hold my beer. For those of you who don't know, I grew up in the Poconos, which is one of the worst areas in the country for reception. I still got stuff. So if I can get stuff, don't give me that an antenna won't work in my area BS. I actually, a funny thing about that, to back it up with data, is with my antenna recommendation service, I've run about 10,000 online reception reports, and I found that about 99% of people get all their major networks. And even the 1% that get like very weak stations can barely get anything, they still get some channels. Just maybe not all of the major networks. So definitely antenna is the way to go. The thing is, it's so critical to get the right one, and you guys have heard me preach this on my YouTube channel, but you go to Walmart, you're destined for failure. If you go to Amazon, you're destined for failure. It shouldn't be that way. It really shouldn't be that way. You should be able to go to Walmart and Amazon, see nice Televis, Channel Master, WineGuard antennas at the top because they are the better performers. Yeah. But instead you see these smaller ones. And not all of them are junk. I mean, like Antennas Direct makes some good antennas.
It all depends on who you are. Like if you just want your local channels and you want something simple and low impact, like the Televis antenna that you reviewed that
The Nova one.
The Nova one is probably like, that's the antenna I tell everyone to buy.
That is a really good small directional, but it also has to do with your area. So if you're in a weak signal area, you don't want a small.
Yeah, you don't want a small one. Like for me, I like to DX. I like to see like on a clear day that I'm not going to get all the channels. I want to get a directional antenna and aim it toward Toronto, aim it toward Montreal or someplace like that, and see just to see what I can get, because I'm a nerd. I like doing that sort of thing with an antenna. So for me, probably the antenna I would need would be a very high gain directional UHF antenna, especially UHF, because VHF doesn't really matter for the far away stations, because the UHF stuff in the summertime travels pretty far.
They have a lot more power. Now, they may not travel, like, it's a little bit different in terms of tropo and stuff, but in terms of like more reliable, consistent, like DXing, I'd say UHF is a little bit better, because VHF, they're just severely underpowered. The FCC set the power limits way too low. Yeah, what happened is, in case you guys aren't aware, during the digital transition of 2009 afterwards, because the FCC sold channels 52 to 69 to cell phone companies, and when they did that, TV stations were spaced closer together on the same frequency, so they had to limit the power so they didn't interfere with each other. And then when they sold more spectrum about 2 years ago, they had to further reduce, maybe not necessarily reduce it, but keep the power limits low, because the issue is if they actually have decent power to output and cover their whole market as they should, they could interfere with stations in the other markets. Like there's a lot on the same
scientists and engineers, we need to expand the Li-Fi and laser technology, so use radio spectrum for cell phones with that spectrum, and leave the radio spectrum alone for broadcast.
Stop messing with it. There's going to be nothing left in like 10 years if they keep messing with it. But no, so that's something I always thought was interesting, was just, I noticed the so UHF can go up to 1,000 kilowatts, so 1 megawatt. VHF, it's like very low. It's like 50,000 watts, usually 30,000 watts. Some areas it's like 10,000 watts. And I understand, yes, lower frequencies don't require as much power. So you can have a VHF that's 80 kilowatts do better than a UHF that's 500 kilowatts. The issue, I feel, is that VHF at like 50 kilowatts is just too low, because the way it doesn't go through building material well, it's just, they're underpowered in my opinion. And I think the FCC is aware of it, but they can't really do much, because if they increase the power, they're going to interfere with each other.
Maybe they're looking at, like, they have the alternative in urban areas too. They have that alternative to stream locally. Yeah. And so maybe that's, and in a more urban area, you're going to have more access to internet. And it's kind of a sad thing, because I like broadcast.
Yeah,
I like
so do I. And so do 200,000 of my viewers.
Yeah.
Yes. It's true. So anyway, I figure we'll go wrap this up now, because we went talking a little bit for a while. I appreciate all of you who stayed tuned for the whole discussion, everything. Robbie, I thank you so much
Thank you for coming over. I'm glad to see you. I come up in Canada, and for the first time out of the U.S.
That's true. And it was a great experience. And you guys will probably see Robbie more on my YouTube channel. You may see me on his YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe to his YouTube channel. What's your YouTube channel name again?
It's Robbie Strike, and you can find me at robbiestrike.com. And I also have, for the satellite stuff, I have a site called freesatellitetv.net. You can find me there and follow some of my videos. So if you want to learn more about that, check out some of my videos that I made. I made a lot of videos on this topic for satellite TV and antenna stuff. And I'm kind of a tech guy. I talk about all sorts of tech, anything, basically radio and tech, right? AV, media, radio tech. So I kind of cover all of it, but I do talk about a lot about satellite as well, and over-the-air stuff.
Cool. And I'll link everything in the description, so you guys definitely follow his channel. He has some really good videos. So again, I appreciate you guys checking out this video, and stay tuned to my YouTube channel for more awesome videos.